It started on a gray Sunday morning, the kind that smells like rain and old coffee grounds. I was sitting at the kitchen table, watching the steam curl from my mug, when I realized how quiet the house had become. It used to hum with life, my wife humming as she cooked, my daughter chattering about school, the sound of the radio playing something from the 70s. Now it was just me, the clock, and a silence that felt like it had moved in for good. Emily hadn't been by in weeks. Not since our last argument. It wasn't even a big one, at least not in the beginning. She'd mentioned selling the lake cabin, the one her mother and I built with our own hands, and I told her that some things aren't for sale. She said I was stuck in the past. I said she was too eager to erase it. She stormed out before dinner cooled. That was 2 weeks ago. I'd been replaying every word since. When the phone rang that morning, I almost didn't answer. But her name flashed on the screen, and I felt that familiar tug, the one that turns fathers into fools. "Dad," she said softly, I was in the neighborhood. "Can I stop by?" There was something in her voice, fragile and rehearsed all at once. I said yes before I could think better of it. An hour later, her car pulled into the driveway. A white Tesla, shining like it didn't belong in front of my old wooden porch. She stepped out wearing one of those oversized beige coats that make everyone look like they're hiding something. Her hair was perfectly styled, her smile almost real. "Hey, Dad," she said, leaning in for a hug. Her perfume smelled like something expensive and hollow. Inside, she moved through the kitchen like a stranger. "You still drink it black?" she asked, pulling out the coffee tin before I could answer. "Let me make it. My peace offering." Her tone was light, almost playful, but her eyes didn't match. I watched her pour the water, measure the grounds, stir with care. The sound of the spoon against the cup was too slow, too deliberate. "You didn't have to," I started. "I wanted to," she cut in, smiling. "We fought over nothing. I shouldn't have said what I said." Her voice softened, but her hands trembled when she handed me the cup. I lifted it, took a small sip. It was stronger than usual, bitter, thick, a strange metallic aftertaste that clung to the back of my tongue. She sat across from me, watching too closely. "Good?" she asked. "Different," I said. "But good." The rain began tapping against the window, soft and steady. We talked about small things, work, the weather, the neighbors. But underneath it all, there was something else. An unspoken current. She kept glancing at her phone. When she finally stood to leave, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "I'll call you tomorrow." Then she was gone. The house went silent again. I looked at the half-empty cup on the table, still warm, still steaming faintly. I don't know why, but a cold unease settled in my chest. Maybe it was just the loneliness, or maybe it was instinct, that old veteran sense that something's not right. It should have been an ordinary Sunday. But that morning, as the rain hit harder and the taste of that coffee lingered, I felt something shift. Something small. Something final. That night I couldn't sleep. The taste of that coffee still coated my tongue, metallic, almost sour. I drank a glass of water, then another, but it clung to me like guilt. My stomach twisted, not sharp pain, just a slow wave that made the room tilt slightly when I stood. I told myself it was nothing, maybe nerves. Emily had come back, after all. Maybe it meant we'd finally crossed the bridge between us. I tried to hold on to that thought until the phone rang again. It was nearly midnight. "Dad?" Her voice sounded bright, forced. "I forgot to mention, Mark and I have been looking into your property taxes. They've gone way up. I'm worried you might lose money if something happens to you. Maybe we should get things in order, just in case." I sat on the edge of the bed, the dark pressing close around me. "What things?" "You know, legal stuff. The deed, the accounts. We could handle them for you temporarily. It'd make things easier." Easier for who? She laughed softly. Dad, please. I'm just trying to help. You always think people are out to get you. The line went quiet for a moment, long enough for me to hear my own pulse. We'll talk tomorrow, I said, and hung up. Sleep never came. Instead, memories did, the kind that crawl out of the dark when you can't keep them buried. Emily at 16, crying after her mother's funeral, promising she'd keep the family together. Emily at 20, storming out after I refused to sell the land. Emily at 30, smiling through lies I pretended not to see. By morning the nausea had dulled, replaced by a pounding headache. I brewed my own coffee, black and simple, and tried not to think about the taste from the day before. But every swallow reminded me. At 10, the doorbell rang. Emily again, bright smile, too early in the day for makeup that perfect. She carried a folder and 2 takeaway cups. You looked tired yesterday, she said. Thought I'd bring breakfast. I let her in, more curious than trusting. We sat where we always did, her on the left side of the table, like her mother used to, sunlight cutting through the blinds. She slid the folder toward me. These are just drafts. Financial stuff. Mark's friend helped us set it up. I flipped through the papers. Transfer of temporary ownership, it read. Joint management authorization. I looked up. You want me to sign my house away, I said quietly. Dad, don't say it like that. She leaned forward, voice trembling between pleading and persuasion. It's just until you're back on your feet. You've been forgetful lately. Forgetful. The word landed harder than she intended. I took a slow breath. Emily, sit down. She froze mid-movement. There it was again, the same twitch in her hands as yesterday when she'd poured the coffee. I need to ask you something, I said. Where'd you learn to make coffee like that? She blinked, confused, or pretending to be. What do you mean? It had a taste. Bitter. Not your usual style. Maybe I put too much in, she said quickly. Why? Because after 2 sips, I felt like I'd been hit with vertigo. Headache. Heart racing. She looked away. You're overreacting. Maybe. But maybe not. I closed the folder and pushed it back to her. If you're worried about my health, don't bring me papers to sign. Bring me honesty. Her jaw tightened. You always twist everything. Then tell me why you and Mark listed my address under your new company. Her face went pale. For the first time, her mask cracked. You looked that up. I'm old, not dead. She exhaled, shoulders dropping. It's temporary, Dad. We just needed collateral until the first loan clears. It's business. You used my name for business. Her eyes flashed. You wouldn't help us. You sit here clinging to Mom's ghost while we're trying to build a life. The words hung there, sharp enough to cut the air itself. I didn't shout. I just looked at her, the daughter I raised, the last piece of my wife left in this world, and felt something inside me shift. Not rage, not hate. Something colder. She grabbed the folder, stood, and said, Fine. Don't sign anything. But when the bank calls, remember this conversation. Then she was gone again, leaving the door half open behind her. Outside, the rain had stopped. The wind carried the faint scent of coffee from the cup she'd left on the table, untouched, still warm, waiting. I poured it down the sink. Watched the dark liquid spiral away until nothing was left but the bitter stain it left behind. That's when I knew. The poisoning wasn't in the drink. It was in the trust. And I'd just swallowed the last of it. The next morning, the sun rose the color of rust, bleeding through the blinds. I'd spent the night in my armchair, half awake, half somewhere between memory and nightmare. My body ached the way it used to after long marches, Old bones remembering discipline even when the mind wanted rest. I brewed my own coffee again, this time slow, deliberate. The smell filled the kitchen, earthy and honest. I held the mug in both hands like it could anchor me to something real. The house was littered with ghosts. Her mother's photographs, Emily's drawings from grade school, the quilt we'd stitched the summer before she left for college. Every object whispered a version of the same sentence: you failed her. Maybe I did. Maybe love had made me blind long before betrayal did. I opened the bottom drawer of the cabinet where I'd kept my wife's letters. The paper had yellowed, the ink fading at the edges. She wrote like she spoke, measured, kind, always finding the good even in the worst of things. One line caught my eye: if she ever loses her way, promise me you'll still be her map. I read it twice. Then I folded the letter and put it back. A map, I thought, doesn't protect anyone. It just shows where they went wrong. By noon I'd convinced myself that what Emily and Mark had done wasn't truly malicious, just stupid, careless, greedy in the way young people are when they think time owes them mercy. But then Marty called. "Jack," he said, his voice gravelly as ever. "I dug around like you asked. Thought you should see what I found." He dropped a manila envelope on my porch 2 hours later. Inside were bank records, email prints, even a property transfer form, and signed but drafted, with my name typed neatly above the line marked donor. The document date was the same day Emily had brought that first cup of coffee. My hands stopped trembling. There was no point anymore. The storm had already hit, I'd just been too busy hoping for sunlight to notice. I spent the afternoon cleaning. It's funny how men like me clean when the world falls apart, every gesture mechanical, almost holy. I washed the mug she'd used. I folded the dish towel. I swept the porch. The rhythm kept me calm enough to think. I didn't want to hurt her. God, that was the hardest part to admit. I wanted her to see. To understand the cost of trading love for convenience. The lesson had to be surgical, not bloody. At dusk I drove to the cemetery. The grass was wet from yesterday's rain, the kind of damp that seeps into your shoes and bones. I stood in front of my wife's stone and spoke softly, like she was just sleeping. "I tried, Sarah," I said. "I really did. But she's not the girl you knew. Maybe none of us are." A wind passed through the trees, rustling the flags by the veterans section. It sounded almost like an answer. "I'm going to make it right," I whispered. "Not for me. For her. For you." On the way home, the plan took shape, quiet, logical, cruel only in its clarity. I'd make them sign the same papers they'd drafted, only this time they belonged to me. Every cent they'd taken, every property they'd claimed under my name, would slide back into my control. I called James, my lawyer. "You still keep things confidential?" I asked. "Always," he said. "What's this about?" "An education," I replied. We met that evening at his office, an old building that smelled like dust and ethics. I gave him the documents, Marty's evidence, the forged drafts. "I want a new trust," I told him, "under Sarah's name. Everything goes there, house, savings, bonds. Make sure Emily can't touch it until she's 40. By then, she'll either be wiser or gone." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to cut her off?" "I'm sure I want her to grow up." He didn't argue. Men like James have seen too many families rot from the inside out to believe in miracles. When I got home, the sky was black and the porch light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. I sat in the dark and wrote Emily a letter. It wasn't cruel, just honest, maybe too honest. "You once asked me what Mom saw in me. She said I was steady, even when the world shook. I hope one day you understand that steadiness isn't coldness. It's love that's learned to stop begging to be returned." I sealed the letter and placed it beside the folder James would finalize tomorrow. Then I turned the family photo face down. Not out of anger. Out of acceptance. The man in that frame, the one smiling between his wife and daughter, he'd done his part. He'd loved, forgiven, endured. Now it was my turn to finish what he started. They wanted to see how far I'd bend. Tomorrow, they'd learn how far I could stand. I didn't rush it. Old soldiers know better than to strike while they're angry. You wait until the field is quiet enough to hear your own breath. That's when the aim is true. For 3 days I let life look ordinary. I fixed the porch light, paid the gas bill, nodded to the mailman. Inside, though, the house had become a command post. Papers spread across the dining table, color-coded tabs like little flags. I read every line of every account until the numbers began to blur into a single, undeniable truth. My daughter and her husband had built their dreams out of my name. On the 4th morning James called. "Everything's drafted," he said. "The Sarah and Foundation is official. No one but you can access it." "Good," I told him. "Now I need one more document. A transfer. Looks like I'm giving everything to Emily. But it's a decoy. It stays unsigned in my safe until I say otherwise." He paused. "Jack, you're setting bait." "Exactly." That same afternoon Marty came by in his pickup, mud spattering the driveway. He handed me another envelope. "Video," he said. "Mark met with a loan shark yesterday. Used your deed again. He's desperate." I watched the footage on my old laptop, Mark's nervous grin, his handshake, the way he said the old man won't notice. He was wrong. I noticed everything. The next step was patience. If I went to the police now, it would turn into noise, lawyers, statements, excuses. But if I let them think the trap was theirs, the silence would do the talking for me. I called Emily that evening. Her voice brightened instantly, like static clearing. "Dad. I'm so glad you called. I was worried." "Don't be," I said evenly. "I've been thinking. You're right about the paperwork. Maybe it's time I made things easier." She hesitated. "Really? Come by this weekend. Bring whatever you need me to sign." She agreed too quickly. That told me everything. Friday I cleaned the kitchen until the counters shone. Set out the good china, even ironed a tablecloth. The smell of lemon polish filled the air, bright and false. I brewed a pot of real coffee, the kind Sarah used to make, slow-dripped, rich, honest. Then I opened the windows and let the cold March wind sweep through the rooms. It felt like clearing smoke after a fire. That night I rehearsed what I'd say. Not lines of anger, but sentences that landed like stones dropped in water. Simple. Final. When Saturday came, the sky was clean and pale. At 11:30 I saw the Tesla shimmer down the road, sunlight glinting off its hood like a warning. I watched them step out, Mark in his pressed shirt, Emily in that same beige coat. She carried another folder. Inside, she laughed nervously. "You went all out, Dad. It smells amazing in here." "I figured we'd start fresh," I said, pouring coffee into 3 cups. "No tricks, no poison, just truth strong enough to taste." They sat. Mark unfolded the folder, spreading out pages across the table like a magician revealing cards. "Here's the new agreement," he said. "Once you sign, we can handle the taxes, insurance, all that boring stuff." I nodded slowly. "Before I do, there's something I'd like you both to see." From under the table I slid my own folder, thicker, heavier. Inside were printouts from the county office, bank statements, and a copy of their loan agreement. I'd highlighted every place my name appeared. Emily's smile faltered. Mark tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "Not yet. Let me finish." I explained the foundation, how every asset had already been moved out of reach. How their company now owed money to a trust they couldn't touch. How the video of Mark's meeting was backed up in 3 different drives. Each sentence I spoke quietly, but the room seemed to shrink with every word. "Dad," Emily whispered, you planned this?" "No," I said. "You planned it. I just wrote the ending." Mark's face hardened. "You'd ruin your own daughter to make a point." I looked at him, really looked, the slick hair, the restless hands, the way his eyes darted anywhere but mine. "She's the one who let you write her morals in pencil." He pushed back his chair, muttering curses. Emily stayed seated, shaking, staring at the table. When he stormed out to the car, she didn't follow. For a long moment it was just the 2 of us, the tick of the clock, the smell of cooling coffee. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said finally. Her voice cracked like thin ice. "I know," I answered. "That's the worst part." She wiped her eyes. "What happens now?" "Nothing dramatic," I said. "You keep your distance. You rebuild. And one day, maybe, you'll remember that honesty was cheaper than ambition." When she left, she didn't look back. The Tesla engine faded down the road, and the silence returned, different this time, cleaner. I sat there until the sunlight shifted and the house cooled. In the empty chair across from me, her cup sat untouched. Steam gone, bitterness left. The trap had closed. No one had screamed, no one had bled. Just paper, truth, and the soft sound of consequence. The following week was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I still rose at dawn, fed the stray cat that had started hanging around the porch, brewed coffee that tasted like it should. But quiet isn't peace, it's only the breath between storms. On Wednesday, James called. "They came by the office," he said. "Wanted copies of your will." Emily looked shaken. "Mark did the talking." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that you'd already finalized everything." "They didn't take it well." I thanked him and hung up. Then I waited. Because that's what men like me do, we wait until the lie comes looking for its reckoning. 2 days later, it did. It was late afternoon when I heard the tires grind over gravel. The same Tesla, now dusty from spring rain, rolled to a stop. Emily stepped out alone. Her eyes were red, her face thinner. I didn't feel triumph. Just inevitability. She knocked once and then let herself in, like she used to. "Dad, we need to talk." Her voice was brittle, caught somewhere between accusation and apology. "Coffee?" I asked. She flinched. "No." We sat at the kitchen table again, the same battlefield, different war. She laid her phone face down, a nervous habit. "Mark's gone," she said. "He packed his things." "Said you ruined him." "I didn't ruin him," I said evenly. "He did that all on his own. I just stopped funding the performance." She drew a shaky breath. "They froze our accounts. The bank's calling about debts I didn't even know we had. I thought you'd at least warn me." "Warn you?" I let out a soft laugh that wasn't amusement. "You had every warning a father can give. You just preferred the sound of his promises." She looked down, twisting the edge of her sleeve. "I thought we were helping you." "You were helping yourselves," I said quietly. "And you nearly made me your collateral. You'd have lost everything eventually." I just sped up the lesson. Tears welled in her eyes. "Is this what you wanted? To see me broke? Alone?" I shook my head. "No, Emily. I wanted you to see the truth. Sometimes the only way to clean a wound is to let it sting." She pushed the folder back toward me, the one she'd brought last week. "You keep your papers, your foundation, your money. I don't care anymore." "Then leave them," I said. "You'll be lighter without the weight of someone else's greed." Her shoulders trembled. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "You'll figure it out," I said softly. But not here. She rose slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the fields. Mom would hate what we've become. She would, I said. But she'd also know this was the only way I could save you from yourself. Emily turned, eyes rimmed red. You think this saves me? It gives you a chance, I said. The rest is up to you. She opened her mouth, closed it again. For a moment she looked 12 years old, the summer she'd broken her arm falling from the old oak, the way she'd cried until I promised the pain would fade. I'd believed it then. I wasn't sure I believed it now. She took her phone and her coat. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Emily. When the door shut, it sounded final. I waited for the usual rush of satisfaction, the vindication stories always promised. It didn't come. The air felt heavier, not lighter. The truth had a price, and it had come due. That evening I drove to the lake cabin, the one she'd wanted to sell. The road was rough with mud, the air thick with pine. The cabin looked the same, peeling paint, the dock sagging into the water. But when I stepped inside, it smelled of cedar and memory. Sarah's blanket still lay folded on the couch. I sat there for a long time, letting the ghosts talk. I thought about Emily's face, the way her voice cracked when she said she didn't know who she was. Maybe revenge wasn't about teaching someone a lesson. Maybe it was about reminding them what they'd thrown away. I took out the letter I'd written her, the one I'd sealed but never sent, and placed it on the table. Then I added a note. You don't owe me anything. But if you ever find your way back to honesty, the door's open. I left it there and locked up the cabin. On the drive home, the sun was setting behind the fields, long gold lines stretching across the horizon. The kind of light that makes everything look almost forgiven. By the time I pulled into the driveway, darkness had settled. The house looked the same as it had that first morning, the porch light flickering, the same mug waiting on the counter. I poured myself one last cup of coffee and sat by the window. The taste was strong, bitter, real. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just the ache of having done what needed to be done. Some lessons carve their way through love like rivers through stone, slow, permanent, necessary. Outside, the night pressed close around the glass. Somewhere far down the road, a car engine started, then faded away. Maybe it was her. Maybe not. Either way, the story had ended the only way it could, with the truth intact and the silence mine to keep. The days that followed moved in slow motion, like time had lost its hurry. I'd wake at dawn, listen to the sparrows nesting under the porch eaves, and let the morning light spill across the floorboards. Every corner of this house had been witness, to laughter, to fights, to silence. Now it felt like it was finally exhaling, the way old trees do after a storm passes and nothing's left to uproot. People think revenge ends with victory. But it doesn't. It ends with stillness, and stillness isn't always easy to live with. I didn't hear from Emily for weeks. The first few days, I kept expecting the phone to ring, half afraid, half hopeful. But it didn't. The house filled with ordinary sounds again, the creak of the floor, the kettle's sigh, the soft hum of the refrigerator. I began to realize that silence can be both punishment and peace, depending on what you bring to it. I spent my time repairing small things, the squeaky porch step, the rusted gate, the garden fence that had leaned since last winter. My hands needed to work. My mind needed the rhythm of rebuilding. When I knelt in the soil, I could almost feel Sarah beside me, humming that same off-key tune she always did when planting. The earth smelled the same as it had 20 years ago, damp, honest, alive. Some evenings I'd drive out to the lake cabin. I'd sit on the dock until the stars blinked awake one by one, scattered like memory fragments across black water. I always brought 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one I'd set beside her folded blanket. It wasn't superstition, it was gratitude. The lake still held our reflection, even if only mine remained to see it. Once, near sunset, I saw a small car parked up the road. Familiar shape, silver paint dulled by dust. Emily sat inside, staring toward the cabin but not approaching. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to come closer. She stayed there for 10 minutes, then drove away. No words, no wave. Just distance measured by headlights fading through the trees. I didn't chase her. I didn't even move. I just whispered, "Good. You're still out there." And for the first time, that was enough. The following week, I received a letter from the bank, final confirmation that the Sarah and Foundation had been secured. Every asset, every bond, the house itself, all protected. James had done it exactly as I'd asked. The foundation would fund scholarships for veterans' children and widows, just as Sarah always dreamed. Her handwriting still adorned the mission statement I'd copied from an old journal entry. She used to say, "If we can't fix what's broken, we can at least plant something that lasts." That night, I sat at the desk and read through the bylaws until the words blurred. Then I smiled. Maybe revenge wasn't the point after all. Maybe it had just been the road I had to walk to find my way back to purpose. Still, the ache never fully left. Some mornings I'd wake thinking I heard Emily's laughter drifting down the hall, only to remember it was just the wind nudging a door. I didn't fight the ache anymore. Pain, I'd learned, doesn't always mean something's wrong. Sometimes it's just proof that something mattered. A month later, I got a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. Inside was a single page. "Dad, I saw what you did with the foundation. Mom would have been proud. I don't expect forgiveness, I wouldn't even know what to do with it if you gave it. I just wanted to say I understand now. I thought taking control meant strength. Turns out, it was the opposite. I'm trying to start over. Don't worry about me. Love, Emily." I folded the letter and placed it beside Sarah's on the mantel. It didn't fix anything, but it softened something that had been frozen for too long. That night, the house felt less hollow. I brewed one last cup of coffee before bed, no sugar, no cream, no bitterness left to choke on. I sat on the porch with it, watching the fireflies pulse across the yard like tiny lanterns. The world was moving again, even if slowly. The veteran in me catalogued the damage, trust lost, innocence gone, peace reclaimed at a cost. The father in me still grieved. But the man, the one left standing in the quiet, finally understood that justice and mercy aren't opposites. They're just two different ways of saying goodbye. I thought about that morning when it all began, Emily's smile too tight, the strange taste of that coffee, the moment I chose to believe her even when I knew better. If I could go back, would I change anything? Maybe I'd have hugged her longer. Maybe I'd have said, "You don't need to earn what's already yours." But I wouldn't erase what came after. Truth has a way of burning clean, even if it leaves scars. Around midnight, I walked to the garden one last time. The air was cool, the soil damp from a late drizzle. A small rose bush Sarah planted years ago had started blooming again, 3 pale flowers, stubborn and alive. I knelt, pressed my palm to the earth, and whispered, "We did it, love. She's still here somewhere." I didn't mean in body. I meant in the echo, the proof that love can survive even through mistakes, even through distance. When I went back inside, I turned off every light except the one by the family photo. I'd put it face down months ago. That night, I turned it upright again. The glass caught the lamp's glow, and for a second, it looked like Sarah was smiling right at me, Emily laughing in her arms. I didn't cry. I just stood there, the weight of years balanced against the simple peace of standing upright again. Revenge hadn't healed me. It never does. But it had stripped away the lies until all that was left was truth, quiet, unadorned, and bearable. When I finally went to bed, the world outside my window was still and kind. Somewhere beyond the fields, my daughter was learning what it meant to start over. Somewhere above us, my wife was resting easy. And me? I closed my eyes, took one slow breath, and listened to the silence. For the first time in a long time, it didn't hurt. It just sounded like home. If this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can continue the journey by clicking the box on the left. Thank you for being here.